Dudes, what is happening? It's Trent here, and today I've got for you a design for Master Yibata. This is a character design, and he fits nicely into the art book for the universe of Twilight Monk. I don't know what I'm going to call this art book yet, but basically I'm just designing the world, a lot of the cities, locations, and characters, and key players and parts of the story, you know. And unfortunately, I've been getting a problem with Camtasia where some of my old files, it just won't load all of the recordings. So unfortunately, we just get the beginning half of this painting. But Master Yibata he's a master at the Crescent Isle Monastery. However, he is also, well, if you haven't noticed, he is not a moonkin. All of the elders at the Crescent Isle Monastery are moonkin, which means that at some point in time, they were as young as Mao Tenza, and they probably had tiny ears and big poofier hair, and now they're all bald and old, but super ripped. Anyway, Master Yibata actually comes from a faraway land. He is the only member of the Circle of Elders who is not a moonkin, and the reason why they accepted him was because he came in and he basically just started wrecking people. He actually defeated several of the other masters in combat, and it was sort of like, I guess either we let him join because that was what he wanted. He wanted to train with them. Either we let him join or he becomes an enemy. And so they decided, well, hey, we'll just let him join. But unfortunately, in order to give him something to do, they decided that he would actually teach some of the other students, some of the young moonkin. But unfortunately, he is a terrible teacher, and that is sort of evident in some of his students. If you are familiar with or if you watch my channel, you've seen probably the video with Mao's rival Nox, who got into a fight with Master Yibata. Allegedly, he won, but there's no confirmation of that, and Master Yibata was pleased to get rid of his students. He just didn't want to be a teacher. He's probably, I would say, he's a bit of a problem at the monastery. They sort of just don't really know what to do with Master Yibata. If they give him a teaching task, his students revolt. And if they give him any other kind of task, he just kind of sits in his room and meditates, or he's in training. So that's Master Yibata, pretty much the short version of what he's about. But say what you will about Master Yibata. Here's the thing, man. This dude has focus. I mean, drop everything else, screw everything else. This dude just wants to be a kung fu master, like a kung fu warrior, the best of the best. I kind of admire that to some extent, even though, I mean, he fails at everything else, but, he's great at kung fu. As far as doing the drawing goes, you'll notice I'm pulling up a lot of reference imagery. There are some really inspiring toads that you can look up, but the way that the shells and the sort of scales all fit together really just compelled me. I was very fascinated with the construction. Now, I don't always find such good reference, but in this case, it really inspired me, and I just sort of latched onto how these scales were fitting together around the eyes, and I elaborated and sort of extrapolated the kind of methodology of construction to form these sort of spikes over the eyes, and then those sort of grow in a very natural and flowy, organic fashion to create some of the shapes around the crown of the head, and then I extended out that crown to really maximize this dangerous feeling of this character. Now, one thing you'll also notice is that I've done this piece almost entirely in grayscale, because I wanted to focus on the character's design itself. And this was from a time before I really kind of made a transition to working primarily in Sketchbook Pro. This was actually done in Photoshop. And you can see where I keep all of my rough sketch lines in place. I find that sometimes they can act as a guide to enhance the details over the top of it, and sometimes I keep the blobs and then I just color dab to get the values that I want to get to really bring out forms and shape my musculature and shape the objects that I'm creating. If you're doing something like beads or conches or belt buckles or something that has a repetitive shape, it's totally fine and acceptable to use the copy paste function, which you just draw a little lasso around the area that you want to duplicate, and I hit Shift Command C will copy all layers, and then Command V will paste it down, and then you can rotate that one bead or something like that. So when you're looking at a painting like this and you're seeing just tons of details, in most cases I'm finding every way that I can to only draw those details once. In fact, if you really study my work, you'll notice that there are a lot of repeating textures and shapes that I've been doing a lot more recently, just because it saves mileage and it still creates this sense of a great deal of detail in the image, and without really taking as much time. In fact, time is really kind of the biggest challenge with something like this. You set out with kind of a budget. I don't really like to spend more than 12 hours on one painting. I think that this one came in the end, I think about 10 hours. And so I try to budget to keep around consistently that same amount of time. But sometimes I get a little bit carried away with some of the areas of detail. I really find when I have an enthusiasm and a passion and a sort of a headspace to get lost in something, I run with it. I don't try to fight that. I try to embrace it. And so you'll see little scales and cracks in his chin, his goatee, and some of the beads that you might see hanging off of his back as he's flying through the air. I wanted to give him these massive sort of bracelets, and there was a movie called Kung Fu Hustle, and if you haven't seen it, you gotta watch it, man. You gotta watch Kung Fu Hustle. If you watch one movie this week, watch Kung Fu Hustle. And there's this scene in that movie where a character was kind of hiding out. He was like this ancient kung fu badass, and he was hiding out in this village, and he was pretending to be like a dry cleaners or something. And when he got into a fight, though, he punches this rod, and then all of the rings, the metal or brass rings, slide down, and then he catches them on his wrists, and he uses these as guards while he's fighting. And I loved that idea, so I wanted to give this character these rings around his wrist that he would use as defensive weapons, but they're made of this glowing stone, so it's like some kind of a magical stone that could give him a little bit of an edge in battle. And you might not immediately know what those do, but when he's fighting, I would just imagine these if he's fighting a character who's slashing a sword at him, for instance, you would just see chips of glowing blue stone flying off everywhere. And when he punches into something, if you can imagine punching somebody with a 15 or 20 pound weight at full force, it's going to increase the momentum and impact of that punch. And so that was really kind of the idea behind Master Yibata, and there's still a lot to work out with this character. I love him though, and someday I hope I can work out his backstory a little bit more in some kind of a book or a film or something. I don't know what, man. I just make this stuff. Maybe someday it'll get made into something more, but for now it's just me doing my YouTube channel for you dudes. Anyway, so that's Master Yibata. I'm sorry, dudes. I wish that I had more of the recording. I really regret that. I think it was right around the time that Camtasia switched to version 3, and it just had some compatibility issues. I lost the last half of this video. I can tell you that I used some gradient map techniques to get that blue around the outer, the lower bottom right portion of him. And ultimately, I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. Master Yibata. There he is. Ba-bam. If you enjoy my videos and you'd like to see this video and other ones slowed at a normal, closer to like a normal speed, as well as some of my tutorials on how to use both Photoshop and Sketchbook Pro, you can check out my Gumroad, which is basically, I have these box sets of tutorials that you can pick up, and it's a lot more thorough, a lot more in-depth, and it certainly keeps this whole thing going too, so I appreciate your support on that. All right, dudes, that's it for me on this one, and remember, if you're gonna draw a funky, fresh warrior frogman, draw a funky, fresh warrior frogman with some freaking passion, man, yeah! All right, dudes, that's it for me. Ciao.